Hi, this is Rachel from Ray K Books, and today I'm going to be interviewing Ryan Grorda. Oh, wow, I butchered that. You just told me what the last name was, and I butchered it. Ugh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, anyway, she has written The Walled City, which is coming out in November. Ooh. And can you please tell us, Ryan, what the synopsis is of this book that we're promoting?
Sure. So The Walled City is a young adult thriller, and it's coming out with Little Brown on November 4th. And yeah, so the long story short is it's actually based on a real place that existed in our world called the Kowloon Walled City. And it was a very small neighborhood in Hong Kong, China. It was only 6.5 acres wide, so it was pretty small, but there were 33,000 people who were living in it at the time. So it was the most densely populated place on Earth, and it really had its heyday in the 1980s. And the reason lots of people moved to the city was because it was basically a no man's land in terms of the law. So the British and the Chinese police, neither of them could go there. So anyone who wanted to do anything illegal lived there. So you had illegal dentists and noodle makers, and of course the Chinese triad. So there was a lot of drugs and brothels and prostitution and gang-related activities going on there. So I learned about this place, and I immediately started to research it because it sounded completely unreal. I'd never heard about it before 2011. And I started researching it and thinking about the different people that lived there. And so 3 different characters came into my brain. It's actually a braided narrative and is told in the first person from 3 different points of view. So the first character, her name is Jin Ling, and she's actually a girl who she lives on the streets, and it's too dangerous for her to be on the streets as a girl, so she has to disguise herself as a boy. And the reason that she's in the city in the first place is because she's looking for her older sister, Mei Yi, who was kidnapped from their farm and now lives in a brothel. And so she's the second point of view. And Jin Ling, to look for her sister, she has to do drug runs for the Brotherhood, which is the equivalent of the Triad. And the boy who sets up these runs, his name is Dai, and he has a very mysterious past in his own life or death mission to get out of the city. So the book is about these 3 teenagers and how they're all trapped in the walled city and how they all have to get out, basically. So yeah, that's the synopsis.
That sounds really depressing. And
Yeah.
yeah, but it also sounds not like a young adult since it's very controversial. There's
Mhm.
you talked about like violence and drugs and prostitution, and that's heavy for teens.
Yeah.
So have you written stuff where you're like this crosses the line since the book seems like really intense, or have you written it so you're like, okay, this is young adult, this is fine?
hmm Um, so when I was writing the book, as you said, it obviously does deal with some very, very heavy issues and subjects. And as I was writing the book, I never wanted to write darkness for darkness's sake. So everything that's in the book is there for a reason. And I really do think that in the end, it's a very hopeful book. And it's so the city, as I was researching it, it really struck me what a strange combination of you had crime and kind of the worst of humanity, but you also had a really, really strong and tight-knit community. So to see how those 2 things kind of lived and were juxtapositioned, it was really interesting. And so the book actually, a lot of like the street kid stuff and the poverty. It came from, so I'm really influenced by travel, actually, in all of the places I've been. And when I was in college, I took a 6-week trip to Phnom Penh, Cambodia. And the purpose of the trip was basically to experience third world poverty and live with a family who lived in the slums. I couldn't, I had to eat what they ate. I couldn't do anything they couldn't do. And so I actually met a lot of kids in that situation who were homeless and parentless, and it was very hard to see and experience. And so in writing the book, I think I was asking questions on my own. I was actually asking a lot of questions about the world we live in, and it can be a very dark place. And I don't think that teenagers necessarily need to be shielded from that. So yeah, so everything I did was there for a reason. I don't feel anything was gratuitous, but yeah, it does deal with very heavy stuff, but I hope in a hopeful way.
With your research,
Mm-hmm.
you did a lot of it.
Yeah.
So how much time did you set aside just for research? And when you were writing the book, since it's all based on a place that you've never really been to,
Right.
were you ever like, is this, like write a sentence and you're like, well, is this really how it is back then? Or, something like that. So what did you do to fact check and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had never actually been to China when I was first drafting the book, and I have since been there. But actually, the walled city itself, it's kind of meant to be a dual narrative, or it can work as two different kinds of books. My editor and I, we decided to change the names very slightly. So Hong Kong is actually a city named Singnoy, and there's various different, so it could work as a historical novel, but the names are all changed, and I never actually say the date. But we did have some people who actually grew up near the Kowloon walled city read the manuscript and do a lot of fact checks, and had one woman tell me all of the Cantonese traditions and regarding to pregnancy and what types of food you eat, and very, very different things. But to research the city itself, I learned about the Kowloon walled city from a woman named Jackie Pollinger, who she actually lived there for 25 years. She moved there in the 1960s, and she went there and worked with street kids, and she worked with the Triad and helped some of the gang members get over their heroin addictions. And so I met her and talked with her a little bit, and she actually wrote a book about her experience in the city. And so I did a lot of reading from that point. And there are some really cool documentaries on YouTube of I think it was a Swiss film crew who went in while the city was still standing, and they just kind of, you can watch it, and it just goes all throughout the city, and they interview people who live there, and it's just really, really fascinating. So I took a lot of little details from that I might not necessarily have come up with on my own.
So can you have a copy of the book with you? Can you hold it up so we can see it?
Yeah. So the cover is changing. This is the original cover, but it looks a little bit different. The final cover is all black, and it has more red typography. But yeah, that's it.
Why did you change it? Because that's so beautiful. I love it how it is.
I know. It's my favorite too. And there was actually a pretty big outcry online when the new changes came up. But there's certain, when you're trying to put a book in bookstores, there's certain bookstores who have a bigger say in the process than others, and so they wanted to gear it more towards boys and have a more, I guess, gritty, edgy feel. So that's the direction they took the cover in. But I miss my dragon on the front. So.
That makes a good point that this is also for guys.
Yeah. Yes.
Nowadays, I go to all these events, all these conventions. Basically, all of them are women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Channel. I look at it. I look at the stats. Women. Or not women, but girl. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, do you get fan mail from boys? How many guys do you think read your books versus girls?
Yeah. Well, my first book, and I'll hold it up. All that glows. It's very pink. So there are some guys who've read it, but the majority of the people who have read this book are girls, and it's very understandable. But I've had a lot, just in the initial feedback so far, I've actually had a lot of guys who have like responded very positively to the Walled City and said really nice things about it. So yeah, my dad, all of my male relatives are like, we liked all the glows, but we're really excited for the Walled City. I'm like, it's okay.
God. Great. So, okay, well, I can't wait to see the new cover. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
So, is there a message in this novel that you want readers to grasp?
And yeah, so the Walled City, as I was, yes, there is a message. I'm trying to like think of it. I'm gonna take a sip of my water first. I'm getting a little horsey.
That's okay. Take your time.
Yeah. So I think themes. I find that when I'm writing the theme that I'm writing about, it usually develops like through the drafts, and it's not until like the last few sets of revisions that I'm like, okay, this is actually really what the book's about, and I must have been trying to work through that this whole time. But I think the one thing I want readers to take away from the Walled City is not just an awareness of like trafficking in the world, which is very important, and that's something that I definitely feel strongly about. But each character in the Walled City is they start the book off in a very lonely, isolated place. Like Jinling, she's trying to survive on the streets, and she has no one. She has no one to provide for her, and she's alone, and she can't trust anyone because she feels like if she does, she won't survive. And Mei, she's trapped inside the brothel, and she has friends. The other girls in the brothel are her friends, but it's kind of also a situation where they'll turn on each other in an instant just to get an upper hand in a situation. So she's very lonely and trapped. And then Dai, he's trapped by his past. And so all three of these characters are very mistrustful, and they feel very alone and just trying to scrape by. And as the book goes on, they learn more and more how to trust each other. And in the end, it's this trust that really brings things together and gives them hope and purpose and meaning. So I just want readers to realize that like no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. So yeah.
Right. So let's talk about future books.
Yeah.
So is there going to be a second one in this, or is this just a standalone?
The Walled City is it is a standalone. But I did sell a duology to Little Brown, so the first book in that will be coming out next fall. Yeah. And
very exciting.
In February, the sequel to All That Glows will be hitting the shelves as well. So All That Burns.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah.
So you have two arcs right now in your hands.
Yeah.
Sure.
Two very different arcs. Yeah.
That's cool. That's really exciting. So when does your second arc, I forgot the name of it right now, that you just showed, when does that come out?
All That Burns comes out February 10th, so like 4.5 months. Yeah. So very, very close release dates and all of that.
So which actress or actresses and actor would you like see playing the lead character from The Walled City?
Ooh. Yeah, that's, I actually haven't dreamcasted that yet. There is a Korean actor, actually, let me, oh, you told me not to touch anything. There is a Korean actor, and I can't quite recall his name right now, but I have pinned a lot of pictures on him on my Pinterest board as Dai. And there is, man, I should have written down some names. I can't remember right now, but I will get back to you guys on Twitter later.
That's fine. We'll be there for you. So now we're going to play a game called Would You Rather. And for those of you who do not know what Would You Rather is, I would ask Ryan here something like, would you rather eat apples or oranges for the rest of your life? And then she'll have to say either apples or oranges. Except this is a literature edition.
Ah.
The first question is, would you rather live in the world of Hunger Games or Divergent?
Ooh. Probably Divergent, because I feel like there's slightly less chance of dying.
Would you rather fight next to Hermione from Harry Potter, Katniss from the Hunger Games, or Tris from Divergent?
What was the beginning of that question? Sorry.
Fight next to Hermione from Harry Potter, Katniss from Hunger Games, or Tris from Divergent?
Probably Hermione. I feel like we could bond over the hair.
You have beautiful hair. It doesn't stick out like hers, so you're good. Would you rather read a book that is written poorly but has an excellent story, or read one with weak content but is written well?
Ooh. Probably the weak content but written well. I'm a sucker for really good writing.
Would you rather, or no, that's not how I'm going to start this. Who would you rather have as a child, Harry Potter or Hermione Granger?
Ooh. Probably Hermione. Again, I'll go with Hermione.
Would you rather write novels where all the characters are women or all men for the rest of your writing career?
Probably all women.
Would you rather only write your books in trilogies or standalones for the rest of your writing career?
Definitely standalones. Sequels are so hard to write. Yeah, they're so hard.
Would you rather write a book without using conjunctions or have every sentence of your book begin with one?
Ooh, that's hard too. I'd probably do it without conjunctions.
Would you rather write a plot twist you hated or write a character you hated?
Definitely plot twists, because it's only a teeny weeny part of the novel, but if you take a character, it's usually longer. Spend more time.
Would you rather a super successful movie be made from one of your books or a long-lasting television series?
Ooh, that's hard too. I could do either, but since I have to choose one, I would probably go with the movie because I feel like there's less, like, potentially less changes, I guess, you could make in a movie than in a long-lasting TV series.
Would you rather critics rip your book apart publicly or never talk about it at all?
Ooh. I would probably never talk about it at all.
And that concludes our Would You Rather game. Yay! Congratulations! So,
Yeah.
all right, so to kind of jump off of the game, but there's an extra question I want to ask about the 10th, or the last question I just asked, which is, do you read bad reviews of your books?
In theory, I try not to, and you know everyone says that you shouldn't. It's funny because I kind of go through like different stages, and I find like I can kind of gauge myself. Sometimes, reading bad reviews, I'm a very sensitive person, and so sometimes they kind of get in your head sometimes and disrupt my current writing process, and so that's never good because obviously I want to keep writing and I want to keep writing well. So whenever I catch myself reading reviews and obsessing or fixating on something that's negative, I pretty much set up my website block and I'm like, don't go to Goodreads, don't do it. Yeah. But yeah, but sometimes, and I enjoy I enjoy constructive reviews too. They'll help you see, maybe what you should be working on or something like that. But it just depends on the mood that I'm in. So really.
If you could have been the original author of any book, what would it have been and why?
Ooh, the original author of any book. I'm sure this is a popular answer, but I'm rereading all of the Harry Potter series right now, and And I just love Hogwarts, and I love that universe. And I would just love to like be able to spend time in it as a writer and just like explore the school and just like the lore and everything. Everything about it is wonderful, really. So.
Surprisingly, out of like 40 people or 40 authors I asked a question, one person besides you said J.K. Rowling.
Oh, really? I would imagine it would be more popular.
I know, I would think so too, but it's not. So my next question, if you were stranded on a desert island, which character from the walled city do you want by your side?
Ooh. Probably Jinling, because she's definitely a survivor, and she has to forage for food and figure stuff out, and I think she would do a good job of doing that. So she'd probably help me survive.
All right, so my next three questions are team questions. Number one, are you Team Edward or Jacob?
Ooh, Team Jacob.
Are you Team Gale or Peeta?
Team Gale, for sure.
Are you Team Simon or Jace?
Team Jace.
And so all three of those were books that were turned into movies.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your favorite book turned movie?
Out of those, or
No, out of anything.
ever? Ooh, probably the Lord of the Rings. Actually, I own all 3 extended editions and watch them about once a year, but they're just wonderful.
What was the hardest and the easiest part about writing this book? We're going back to the Walled City.
Ooh. The hardest part of writing The Walled City, it was definitely like the cross-cultural aspect of me writing outside of a culture that I was raised in, and just trying to get that right, and doing the research and doing all of the grunt work to make that possible. And I think, I want to say there's like nothing easy about writing a book, but I think just the writing itself, it was hard. Like I spent a long time on this book, and just like trying to discover it, but it was a very organic thing, and I think it was easy for me to know what was right. Like once I wrote it, to know, okay, this is the way the story needs to go, or this is the way it needs to be. So.
And so you're a new writer, which means you have a whole writing career ahead of you. So, what is a genre that you would like to get into next, and what is one that you would never like to write in?
Well, my duology that's coming out next is actually an alternate history. So I'm kind of jumping into that. I find myself, I'll probably mostly be a YA writer, in terms of like overall like age group genres. I would like to try middle grade at some point, and I don't ever within YA I would never say never to any type of subgenre, but I could pretty confidently say I would never write erotica or anything like that. So.
And what books have most influenced your life?
Yeah, well, when I was younger, I was a huge fan of the Redwall series by Brian Jakes, and he probably wrote over 20 of them, but those books really were the ones that like fostered a love of reading. For me, I remember my mom first got one of them for me from the library, and I was like, I don't want to read this, it looks stupid, like there's mice on the cover in a ship, why are they in a ship? But I started reading them, and then I just couldn't get enough of them. So they really helped me start to love reading. And then the book that actually really got me into writing seriously was Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine.
Oh my God, I love that book.
No, yeah. So I adored it and loved it. And when I finished reading it, I wanted more, and I tried to look for a sequel, and she never wrote one. So I was like, well,
Yeah,
I was like, I'm gonna write my own fan fiction. And so it wasn't like technically fan fiction, but it was like so I wrote this like 60-page like story that was kind of like very similar, like royal romance. And it's actually funny because All That Glows involves a royal romance, so probably just extended that love of Ella Enchanted. But yeah, so Ella Enchanted was definitely a huge influence. And I was an English major, so there's tons and tons of books that really, shaped my writing and studying and stuff. But those are two of the early bigger ones, for sure.
Did you know that there is a second and a third Ella Enchanted, except they're secondary characters and briefly mentioned?
The ones,
but it's not the same world.
Is it the ones with like the princesses? I think I read one of them. I didn't know about the third one though.
Yep, there's three. They're not as good as Ella Enchanted. Like nothing could top that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they're pretty cool. Ella Enchanted, man. What did you think of the movie? I know.
Yeah.
I know.
It like physically hurt me to watch that movie.
I was almost in tears. Like I was going to cry. I'm like, what have they done?
Yeah.
What have they done?
It could have been such an amazing movie, and it just wasn't at all. Yeah.
I don't know. Like right at the ending when they started to sing, like the singing.
Yeah, that's what killed it. Yeah.
I feel your pain, woman. I feel your pain. All right, so we have a couple more minutes left, so I'm going to take one more question. And it's a question that is asked a lot, so I'm going to ask you. Mm-hmm. And that is, what is some writing advice you have for aspiring authors?
Okay. Well, writing advice is... So I always knew I wanted to be an author, even from when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and pretty much just I went to high school for writing and went to college for writing, and I never stopped. And I think that's one of the things. Fear is such a huge thing that holds back people who could be amazing writers, and is fear of rejection, or fear of, people thinking that you're silly, or fear of, the unknown. But I think it's once you kind of just swallow your fear and start doing it. And some good advice that was given to me in college by one of my writing professors was write every single day, no matter what. And it doesn't have to be a lot of words, but as long as you're getting something down on the page, that adds up really, really quickly. And even if it's a few hundred words or 50 words, if you're doing it every day, you have a book at some point. And so I think the key is persistence and not giving up and not being afraid to fail, essentially.
And that concludes our interview. But before I go, Ryan here is very kind, and she's going to give away an ARC, or an advanced reading copy, of The Walled City, which comes out in, you said 4 weeks?
6 weeks, yeah, November 4th.
Right, 6 weeks. And, okay, oh wow, it's not next month. I keep saying next month. It's 2 months from now, or a month and a half.
Yeah, a month and a half.
A long time. Just a long time from now. And in order to win, you have to do a few things. Number one, you must comment with a way to contact you. This is new because I've been trying to contact people via YouTube inbox and it doesn't work. So please give me an email or a Twitter handle, something like that. And then number two, and this is optional because not everybody has Twitter, and that is to follow Ryan on Twitter, and I will put her username in the description. And if you do follow her, please put your... Oh, wait, I think I just said that. Did I just say put your username in the description if you follow her? No.
I don't.
I'm sorry. I just like I was saying a sentence and then I was thinking of something else and then I like lost it.
Yeah.
I don't know what I've. Okay, so let me just repeat the second one freshly. Okay, the second one is to follow Ryan on Twitter. I'm sorry. And if you do follow her, then please put your username in the comment to verify the entry. And that is it. Thank you so much, Ryan, for speaking with me and being interviewed. This was a blast to talk to you.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me.
Yep, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.